Do short theme song intro. Hello, welcome to Left of the Box News Bites. Bonjour, bienvenue. I'm Sandy. There was an election in Canada. If you were out of the country for the past couple of months and upon arrival do what every Canadian does and checks the distribution of party seats in Parliament, you would accuse people of messing with you when they told you an election happened. But when you go to your bank account and find $610 million missing, you might be more willing to believe it. This was the most expensive election in our history, with the lowest turnout since 2008, which was the lowest turnout ever. I'm sure by now you've seen other in-depth analysis of the election from smart people like David Dole or Christo Avilés, or have seen enough discourse online that you're ready to unplug for the next election. So why pay attention to my breakdown? Because I have something none of them had. An Excel spreadsheet. Do you know what won't cost you anything? Hitting the like button. The subscribe button is free for this week only. If you follow me on Twitter, I might leave coins for you to collect, and you can give me money on Patreon, where your return in value will be far greater than this election. As is typical style with me, I'm making this a few days after the subject was trending. My mood hit a low and I thought I could just app-lib this. I'm still having troubles with the app-libbing, hence the lack of eye contact right now. But for a good portion of this, I will go off script. I need the practice before I start live streaming. I would like to preemptively thank the people who will tune into my first few live streams because they're gonna be a mess. But just like my videos, it will take a bit of time before I find my groove. Anyway, they should be entertaining. A reminder, this election was completely unnecessary and irresponsible to call during a pandemic. We had 2 more years before the next one had to be called. In between the set time frame of 4 years, an election should only be called for one of 3 reasons, barring exceptional circumstances. The throne speech fails to pass, a money bill fails to pass, or a motion of non-confidence is made and passed. None of that happened. Justin Trudeau disregarded parliamentary procedure and called an election because he thought he could gain more power. How'd that turn out for you, Justin? I should probably put up a picture of him. Here's a recent photo. This had nothing to do what was in the best interests of the people. If he wanted to do what was best for us, he would have worked with the NDP to pass more bills that would have benefited us. I have no doubt people caught COVID and others were disenfranchised because of their fear of catching COVID, all for Justin's greed for power and ego. So, this election cost $610 million. Why? Vague reasons. Stuff to do with the pandemic and training, the amount of one-time use pencils needed, which proves my theory I'm not the only person to hold the pencil in my mouth when filling out the voting ballot. With all the money spent, you'd think the result would be a smoothly run election. But, as with most things in government, lots of taxpayer money was spent with no benefit to the public and no accountability. Another reminder, the Doug Ford government lost $4.4 billion in COVID relief funds. Yeah, that's not being talked about nearly as much as it should be. This tweet from Budrino sums it up. The least democratic election in decades. We need a national inquiry. Inquiry. 17% of mail-in ballots didn't make it on time. That's important to note because some of the wins between the Liberals and the NDPs and even the Conservatives were razor thin. That percentage of mail-in ballots could have swung an election. Huge portions of voting stations closed, and this was evident especially in Toronto, where lineups were going around the blocks. Some people were waiting as long as 2 hours, and there were people waiting well into the night in order to vote. But they told people that so long as you were in the lineup by 9:30, you should have been allowed to vote. Be interesting to see how many people stuck around that long. No voting stations on certain reserves. No on-campus voting. Yeah, that was difficult for students because many of them don't have vehicles, and the voting stations they were told to go to were far outside of the campus and would require a vehicle to get to. And then there's this tweet from Johnny Bowhunter. So Trudeau called an unnecessary COVID election, and now it's coming to light that some First Nation communities didn't get to vote. And there's a video explaining how some of the communities never got a polling station to go vote at. And it's not like they could have just gone to the next community over, because these communities are spread out over vast distances. I encourage everyone to go to Johnny's Tweet and read his thread. He talks about the horrendous conditions in Cat Lake with mold and the poison water in Grassy Narrows. If only we had $610 million to spend, the condition on all reserves could be drastically improved. The next person who asks where the money will come from to get clean drinking water to all Indigenous communities can chew on my used voting pencil. The government constantly spends, wastes, and loses billions. They find the money for the things they want. There's no excuse for not providing people with what they need. On the day of the election, people were having troubles finding their polling stations, as the Elections Canada website wasn't telling them where they were, and mail-in ballots weren't received on time to be able to send them back. People should be fired over this. Intended or not, this was voter suppression. Some people have cut Elections Canada some slack and say they were doing the best they could with such short notice. Are you trying to tell me they didn't have an action plan for a snap election? Granted, this was a snap election during a pandemic, but it wasn't as some make it out to be. For most people, this came as a surprise, but for folks plugged into politics, we all knew this was coming. The parties were already prepping for it. I even mentioned it was about to be called in my last Bill C-10 video. There will be more to come on that subject in future videos. So the idea Elections Canada was caught off guard doesn't fly with me. Elections are their sole responsibility. Elections Canada is supposed to be nonpartisan, but it gets government money. The government has an agenda. Isn't it strange how a country that uses a parliamentary system has only ever had 2 ruling parties in its 150 plus years of elections? So the low voter turnout will be in part because of the mess of Elections Canada created. A lot of people were unimpressed with the election being called and remained unplugged. And with the election taking place over the shortest time frame allowed, 36 days, the parties didn't have a chance to get their message out there the way they should have to energize their base. The longest the election cycle is allowed to be is 50 days. Pro tip to the other parties: do more in between elections to get your message out there, engage with the EDAs more, talk to people ahead of time about running as a candidate so when it's called, out of the blue, a lot of your groundwork has already been done. What did Justin Trudeau get for his $610 million? Are you ready for the best part of the video? You guessed it! On to the results in Excel and my attempt to ad-lib. Excel makes me happy, okay? So here are the final results on the screen from the election. It took a few days for them to actually be gathered because a lot of the mail-in ballots weren't counted until days after. So this is the final results compared to last year. So you can see the Liberals here gained 2 seats. Well, that's a yes and a no. Let's go over to this article from CTV. Former Liberal candidate dropped from party amid controversy says he'll sit as MP after winning Toronto riding. The former Liberal candidate elected in Spadina-Fort York has confirmed he intends to represent the riding in Ottawa despite calls for him to step aside after a past allegation of sexual assault came to light. This statement was released on Wednesday after Kevin acknowledged that not everyone is happy he was elected. Just days before the election, the Toronto Star revealed that he, a naval reservist and business owner, had faced a sexual assault charge back in 2019, a charge that was later dropped. Following news of the allegations, the Liberal Party asked Vaughan to pause his campaign, and Liberal leader Justin Trudeau later confirmed that if elected, he would not be part of the Liberal caucus. So, yeah, a lot of people are upset about this. Many people voted early in advance polls or mail-in ballots, and had they known this, they would have changed their vote. Kevin got in under the Liberal banner. And even though the Liberals have said he's not part of their caucus, he's still going to vote with them all the time. So really doesn't make a difference if he's Liberal in name or not. What should happen is he should step down. Now, I will grant the charges were dropped. It doesn't prove he's innocent, but it doesn't prove he's guilty either. If this was a false allegation or something that he is completely innocent of, then why didn't he mention it during the vetting? Why wasn't this brought up well before he even became the candidate, instead of hiding it and hoping it wouldn't come out? And you can't tell me the Liberals didn't know. The parties, their vetting process are very thorough. Something like this should have been easy for them to find. So them allowing him to run as a candidate without any acknowledgement of these charges says a lot about who this party is and who they truly represent. I have a recent video, go and check it out, where I talk about Raj and Marwan. I have a recent video, go check it out, where I talk about Raj and somebody else from the Liberal Party who also had to step down at various times due to allegations of sexual misconduct. You know, when they start piling up like this, the party should really look at themselves and do some soul searching as to the type of people that are drawn to the party in the first place. Okay, back to the Excel spreadsheet. If you like Excel and you want to see more of it, why don't you just go and hit that like button? However, if you never want to see an Excel spreadsheet in my videos again, just go ahead and hit the like button. The Conservatives down 2 seats, the Bloc up 1, the NDP up 1, the Greens down 1, the PPC, they're about the same, and an independent. Yeah, these numbers here aren't that terribly important. So when you start digging into the numbers, which is something I like to do, and this is why it can take me a long time to do a video, because I start peeling things apart and realize there's more important information there. There is something about the first past the post system that is outrageously biased as to who can get a seat. These numbers here show the difference between these two. The Conservatives got almost 200,000 more votes than the Liberals. The Liberals only got 32.6% of the popular vote, which is, if it's not the lowest, it's probably very close to the lowest of the popular vote for any elected leader. The difference between the NDP and the Bloc, though, is extraordinarily stark. 1.7 million difference in votes. The NDP had over 17% of the popular vote. The Bloc under 8%. And yet the Bloc has 33 seats and the NDP has 25. That's not fair representation of what this country wants. And even here, you look at the PPC compared to the Greens, and the PPC got over 400,000 more votes than the Greens. Now, personally, I don't want the PPC to have seats, but according to what Canadians voted, they should have more seats than the Greens. Now, if you look over here, this is the difference in the votes from 2019. So of all the major parties, the only party to actually gain more seats was the NDP. But here, I find is a very alarming number. The PPC got over 500,000 more votes than last time, making that the largest increase out of any party. This was also, if we see, I'm doing these nice little tricks where I have it in white print and then I go to black print so then you can see it, so you can see all these fun numbers. This shows the percent of the population that went out and voted. Now this is the number of eligible voters versus what the actual population of the country is here. This is the lowest since 2008, and 2008 was the lowest, so this was the lowest. Last time, in 2019, 67% of eligible voters went out and voted. Now let's get a little bit more into what proportional representation means and what that would have looked like for us. So from Polling Canada on Twitter, based on the 2021 election results, if we had proportional representative parliament, we'd have 8 parties in parliament and 1 independent. Scroll down here for you. So this is the proportional representation here compared to the numbers that were actually voted in. So the Conservatives would have the most amount of seats because they got the most amount of the popular vote, right down to the Greens having 8 seats and the PPC having 17. The Free Party and Mavericks would also have somebody representing them in Parliament. Now, if you're wondering, who is the Free Party and the Maverick Party? You just outed yourself as not seeing my last video because I actually go over that. So pause this video right now, open up a new tab, go to my YouTube page, watch the other one so that you know what the context is. I'm not going to wait, it's a fairly long video, but it's entertaining. I hope you like it. And here's Parliament if we had proportional representative government based on the 2021 results, but with a 5% vote share threshold. A lot of the countries that use proportional representation have a 5% vote threshold, so that a party must demonstrate that they have a certain amount of popularity in order for them to actually get into Parliament. But with those numbers taken into consideration, we have the results here, and it's very similar. The PPC at 17, the Bloc at 27, NDP at 62. And yet, under the first past the post system, we got 25. Justin Trudeau made that promise about first past the post going away. Back in 2019, he made that promise, but considering he was allowed to get in with 32% of the vote and less of a popular vote than the Conservatives, 40 more seats than the Conservatives, tells you all the reasons why he never bothered to actually get rid of first past the post. This system favors them. It also favors the Conservatives. It doesn't make it possible for the smaller parties to actually pick up the traction and gain momentum to eventually displace the 2 main parties, the Conservatives and the Liberals. So far this ad-libbing has been somewhat rambly, which I kind of expected. I don't know how entertaining the numbers are. I mean, if you like numbers, then you probably found that very interesting. I like the numbers, but I'm a little obsessive compulsive at times, and I thrive on things like that. You see, right now, the ad-libbing, it's in this weird middle ground for me. I'm very good at reading from one of my scripts. I would hope that you agree. I'm also very good at improv, but the thing with improv is that you have other people with you to react to respond to support you. When I am just ad-libbing a news story, I don't have that support. I'm not reacting off of anything other than the information I'm reading. So what I am hoping and what I would love to encourage is that when I start live streaming, please show up and please be active because I want to interact with you more. I want to have conversations with the people watching my videos. That will give me things to play off of. That will give me things to react to. I'm open to answering any questions at any time, really. Because this channel isn't just, it's not about me. It's about getting information out there. It's about our shared experience in this country. And so it's important to include you in what I'm doing. So when I start The live streams, please. It will be bad at first, no doubt about it. But I appreciate you giving me the chance, and I'd appreciate you coming on and participating in the chat to show me I have that support. Okay, back to the script. It costs $610 million to maintain the status quo. For many, the status quo is suffering with horrible living conditions and poverty. Not one of the parties championed the issues of people living with disabilities. Over 6 million Canadians, that's 1 in every 5, have 1 or more disabilities. Most people living with disabilities are forced to live in dire poverty. The Liberal government promised a 3-year study into our situation. 3 years, eh? Here's a tweet from Tyler Stack. This was from Election Day, so just the NDP has committed to raising support for people living with disabilities and seniors to $2,200 a month. The Liberals have a 3-year study ending in 2024-25, likely to make their benefit a campaign promise if given a majority today. Yeah, so our lives are basically used as pawns in election campaigns. Here's the map blown up so you can see the numbers a bit clearer. In Ontario, it's 1,169. Go over to New Brunswick, it's only $697. In the Northwest Territories, it is $2,153, but keep in mind the cost of living out there is absolutely and utterly outrageous. So the fact that none of it is only $875, that is, proportionally wise, probably worse than New Brunswick. Average rent in my area for a 1-bedroom apartment is $1,400 a month. Look up the cost of rent in your area and compare it to the number you saw. There. The study's done. We don't get enough. Many people with disabilities won't make it 3 years. A lot of them will die of despair. The Liberal government's response to that? Let us help you. You can now apply for MAID, Medical Assistance in Dying. That is the government we got back. And this is why I am relieved that the Conservatives didn't get a majority. But I am not happy about these results, because this status quo is killing us. And the Liberals have made it clear they don't care. Our government needs to do better. The NDP has the power to push for a more progressive agenda to agree to pass the Liberals' throne speech and money bills. This time, they need to lean into their power more. Things to look out for. The increasing popularity of the PPC. As you saw, they had the biggest jump in support this election. If they grow big enough, as has happened in the past, they will merge with the Conservatives to form one unified party that will be further right than it is now. It's important to keep in mind, not everyone who voted for the PPC are right-wingers. Many were anti-maskers. This is something the right excels at. I got to use excel again. I got to just kind of slide that word in there. I'm an Excel nerd, okay? I can't help it. Anyway, this is something the right excels at, supporting each other's agenda. A large portion will support anti-maskers so long as they support, even passively, their racist policies. They work together towards common goals. And the PPC is willing to exploit the growing QAnon movement for their own gains. They see what is popular and go all in. If it doesn't work out later, they deny they ever supported it, even with evidence to the contrary readily available. They are soon going to be the party of conspiracy theorists. And they will start winning seats. You see, part of the reason why I actually kind of would have preferred if the PPC won their seats was it would show Canadians what is actually happening, because not a lot of them will actually know the massive jump in popularity that party got, because none of them got the seats. Whereas if they had gotten the seats, it would have been visible to everyone that we're in trouble. Meanwhile, on the left, parties fracture if there isn't 100% agreement. And not only do we not support each other, groups will try to cancel and shut down people who do a lot of good, but then make a few decisions that go against their principles, often without waiting to hear why. There are people on the left that should be called out for their bad takes, but we need to be measured in our response so we don't end up alienating allies and losing them altogether. People moving to the center try to shut down people moving more progressive. People moving more progressive try to shut down people moving to the center. I'm progressive, and I understand that we can only do so much, and when someone is bent on moving center, we need to cut ties with them. But for all the lefties moving in the same direction, we need to work together. I'm a fan of constructively criticizing the left, but in the end, a gain, even if it doesn't go as far as I'd like, is still a gain. You will note I will continue to criticize the liberals, and it won't always be constructive. They're not on the left. They haven't been for a while. Their voting record and lack of actions show their true color. Blue. It's blue, like conservatives. That's what I mean by they're blue. Bill C-10 will come back and be put through the parliamentary process even faster. Since the NDP and Bloc got on board with it, it will pass unless the public demands otherwise. We need to start protesting it now. It's times like this I wish I had a bigger platform to get this important message out to a wider audience. Bill C-10 will be disastrous for online content creators and anyone who uses social media. This from Open Media. Within their first 100 days, the Liberals have promised to move forward with the disastrous CanCon misfire of Bill C-10. But that's just the start. They will also move forward with their proposed online harms legislation, which claims to curtail things like online hate speech, but as written, would actually make Canada's internet one of the most censored and surveilled in the democratic world. Why? New obligations would turn platforms like Facebook and Twitter into surveillance and censorship agents of the state, overzealously removing many of our lawful posts and reporting them directly to CSIS and the RCMP. I'm not against regulation. I think the internet should be regulated. I don't think hate speech should be allowed to be spread on the internet. But these bills, the way they're written, it's not the way to do it and will end up doing a lot of harm to people who are trying to do a lot of good. If we allow this to pass, it's only a matter of time before other countries follow our lead. Please go back and watch my other Bill C-10 videos and share them widely. This is something we can stop, but we need to act now. For more information, follow Michael Geist and Open Media on Twitter or go to the Open Media webpage linked below and join their mailing list for updates and to find out ways on how to help. I'm sure I'll be making more videos on this subject as it develops. With another minority government, we're looking at another election within the next couple of years. A lot will change over that time. We can choose to let the change happen to us, or we can be the change. This has been a rather dry video, I will admit that. It's numbers, it's outcomes, it seems a bit dire at times, and I don't want to leave this video on such a negative tone, so I'll be right back. Oops. This is my cat Tulip. See? Look at the camera, sweetie. Just over a month ago, I had been taking her into the vet and her health had been really, really bad. And the vet was ready to put her down and they were even talking to me about scheduling a time. I was about to go through my move and losing her at the same time would have been very difficult to handle. So she still seemed okay for the most part, so I decided to take her home and see if she could just peacefully die at home. And with that, I decided to stop the medication she was on for the hyperthyroidism. Well, I think it was the medication that was actually making her that sick. Just One more minute, baby. Look in the camera. After I stopped giving her the medication, a few days later, she started to eat. And a few days later after that, she started to get to be her normal self again. And she handled the move like a boss. She absolutely loves the new place. At first, she probably thought that it was all for her because her brother was hiding under the bed, and I think she liked it that way. She wants to be an only cat. And she's back to her perky, spicy self. And I understand her health isn't good. She is still going to pass away. She has stage 2 kidney failure and her liver is failing. Okay, I'll put you down, sweetie. So she is going to pass away, but it could be months from now, just given how well she's doing. She's still skinny as all can be, despite the fact that she is eating a healthy amount. So having her in my life these extra weeks, being able to hold her, having her come and sit on my lap when I'm in the middle of trying to do something, all the little annoying things that I would miss terribly had she gone. I still get that for a while. Months, who knows, maybe even years. All I know is that I truly appreciate the time that I get to spend with her now. And I'm so glad that I made the decision to hold on to her just a little bit longer for her to come out of that. Anyway, don't forget this week's special. The subscribe button is free to click. The like button is always free to click. Do the communist thing and share this video. Follow me on Twitter. I might drop cents there for you to gather. And leave words below. It helps. If you can, please help me out by becoming a Patreon. Link in the description box below. Thank you to all the wonderful people who have already become patrons. Your support means the world to me. And stay tuned. After 1,000 subscribers, I will look into live streaming. I still need to do the research on how to do that, and I'm nervous, but excited. It will be an adventure that I hope you join me with. Join me on. Salut, à la prochaine. Thank you for watching and stay tuned. I'm Sandy, wishing your tomorrow is better than your today.